Okay, so let's have a look at what we're going to do today. So I'm trying to add kind of an objectives and a checklist into each folder, particularly so if you're not doing the class live in real time, you've got kind of a checklist as to what it is you're supposed to be doing each week. So one thing we're going to do today is kind of plan out the application we're going to build together on Tuesdays. Um, Sorry, WebEx is doing funky things for me. When I tried to share my screen and record. I think I'm going to have to leave and return to the meeting. Be right back. I'm going to stop my screen share for a sec, as well as. Okay, sorry about that. So what we're going to do, we're going to build like we did in our PHP class, where we built a music library and we added on each week. We're going to. I want to build an e-commerce site using ASP.NET Core. So we're going to figure out what kind of store we're going to build. We're going to set up the project, and then we'll continue to work on that project all the way through the term. We want to create our own controller today and kind of experiment, play around with method parameters with the controllers as well. Maybe even look at passing some data. We're not going to work with the database today, but we'll look at how do we pass some data from a controller to a view, and then how do we render it. I'm also going to give out the semester-long project in 5 phases and assign the first small phase of this, which is going to be due next week. So is a checklist here for you for this lesson 2 checklist. So these are the items that I want you to have done before by Monday of next week, by the 21st. So you should have completed the quiz based on this week's lesson. Again, that quiz will be enabled today at 5 p.m. and it's available until next Monday at 5 p.m. You should have set up your new in-class project and enable the user authentication and HTTPS. You'll have created a new controller in the project and created a mock model. There's also an activity, and this is graded. So at the end of the lesson, I've got a quick couple questions for you in the discussion thread, basically just asking you for a couple of takeaways from today's lesson. So what's something kind of useful you learned, and what's something related to the lesson that you'd still like to know? So you have until next Monday to post, and that's basically, that counts for that 10% of your class activity mark. And basically, as long as you put in a posting with some kind of legitimate answer, you get 2 marks out of 2. If you post and put in a nonsense answer, you get 1 out of 2. If you don't post at all, by next Monday, you get 0 out of 2. And then also by next Monday, you'll submit assignment 1A. So we can actually go ahead and have a look at the assignment now. And if you've got questions, then you can jump in. So first part of your semester-long project in assignments, down at the bottom, it's this assignment 1A, the project plan. So we can have a look at this document. So basically what I'm asking you to do in the first week is figure out what you want to build for your semester long project. So this is not group work, it's an individual project, and everybody's going to have to build their own, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute. So the instructions are in this Word document. Okay. So before you, this document is due next Monday, but before you submit it to me on Monday, you're going to have to go to this website that I've set up. We'll have a look at it. And you're going to have to submit your project idea to me. Okay? And the idea here is that everybody in the class needs to build something that's different. So we'll have a look at that website in a minute. It's very simple to use. Once I've approved your project, then you'll complete this short Word template and you'll submit it on D2L. So the first part for 1A for your project proposal, this is worth 5%. This is basically 5 free marks for you. And then assignment 1B is actually starting the application and enabling create, read, update, delete functionality. And then after reading week, we're going to add authentication. And later in the semester, we're going to add unit testing and a web API. So it's total 45%, but it's one project you're going to build in these 5 phases. So all you have to do for assignment 1A, submit your project at the link here and wait for me to approve it. And then complete this Word document. Tell me your name, describe what it is you want to build for the project, explain the utility of it. Why are you building this? What's the point of it? What's the value? And then include, you're going to create a new GitHub repository, make sure that it's private, and add me as a collaborator. So this is actually 5% of your final grade just for filling out this template, which is pretty easy. So we can go and have a look at the project submission website. So I actually built this little project using .NET Core. So you're going to come here and click on choose your section. And here's our section right here, the Tuesday section of COMP2084G. So before you submit a project idea, you click on view projects and you can see any of the project ideas that have already been submitted. So if somebody else can't submit, the same idea as you. And you won't see these edit and delete links. I only see them because I'm logged in. So then you're going to go to submit your idea. So again, you choose your section. I would say, I'm going to submit my project. And you just put in your student email and put in an explanation of what you want to build. Okay. This gets emailed to me, and then I can log back into the site and either approve your project or I can say that idea isn't going to work. So I can approve it or not, and I will send you a response, maybe suggesting how you'll need to modify it because maybe the project isn't appropriate or it's too similar to what someone else is doing. Okay, so you will get an email. You do have to watch, those emails tend to go to your junk folder. So you will have to watch for those. So first you submit on the project website the idea of what you want to do. And once I've approved it, you complete this Word document once your project's been approved, and you upload this Word document to D2L for next week for 5 o'clock. Does anybody have any questions about this part of the project? You can use the chat or just turn on your mic. So you can build anything you like, so long as users can create, read, and update and delete data in your database. There needs to be registration and login capability, and then eventually unit testing and a small API. So you can build a project that's interesting to you. You can build a project that you think you might be able to sell or have someone pay you for. It's up to you. But the idea is everyone's work has got to be different. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, which tells me this is hopefully fairly clear and everybody understands the requirements. Make sure that you submit your idea. Because this document is due at 5 o'clock next Monday, don't submit your idea to review for me at 4 o'clock on Monday, because if your idea isn't workable, you've then run out of time to get your idea approved. So I'm going to strongly recommend you submit your idea for approval this week in the next few days. So that'll give me a chance to review all the submissions and approve them, or make suggestions and ask you to resubmit. Next week, we can look at, I'll assign the second part, 1B, and also show you a sample project from last year. We'll give you a pretty good idea of what I would be looking for in this assignment. Okay. So next item for today is I want to talk about, want us to decide and set up our in-class application we're going to be building. So I'd like to build it as a store shopping experience where we can manage kind of products and categories. Users can browse around the store, choose a product, add it to their shopping cart, check out, create an order. And if we have time, also incorporate credit card payment. We can use an actual payment gateway, use their sandbox, so that we could actually send payments. If we have time, I'd like to incorporate that. So that being said, I'd like a few suggestions. Let's talk about, maybe take a poll. I think last semester we voted to build a music library. So for this semester, we're going to build some kind of mock online store. What interests you guys? What kind of store should we build? So if you want to put forward a few ideas, a few suggestions, either with your mic on or in the chat. Okay, and then I'll throw up a quick poll and we can vote. Okay, so games, beer, bootleg products, books. Okay, well, you know what? Those are 4 good suggestions. So I'm going to create a quick poll. Yeah, computer hardware, that's a good idea. Stickers. All right, I will put these suggestions up on a quick poll, and then you guys can vote. So bear with me for a second. So we have beer, games, books. Just scrolling through the chat. Bootleg products. Stickers. I was wondering, Alex. Okay, so let me just save the poll and I will publish it. So bear with me for a second. Okay, let's try this link. I'll just try it in a different window and make sure it works. I may need to. Okay, so you should be able to vote. Okay. Well, that's a pretty clear vision of what we're building. So we're going to build a beer store. Actually, this is kind of useful because we can look at the actual. I know you can't buy online through the beer store. At least I don't think you can. But we can look at how their kind of inventory is organized, what features are there, and we might recreate some of the functionality of the actual beer store website with our own application. You know what, Leo? I was wondering if you could. Maybe you can. I don't know if you could before COVID, but we can see. You can? Okay, I will trust you. If anybody would know, it's college students. Right, but some of the features they have, yeah. Okay, so it's on a different site. It's on Beer Express. So some of the features here may be things that we add. So we'll probably look at this site at Beer Express for reference as we go. Okay, so we've done our poll. So let's make, I'm going to open up Visual Studio and let's make a new project for today. So open up Visual Studio and let's create a new project. Now, if you're on Windows, we're going to choose this option, same one we chose last week, this ASP.NET Core Web Application. If you're on a Mac, I think it just says ASP.NET Web Application. It doesn't actually say Core. I didn't realize that until a few Mac users in my class yesterday pointed this out to me. So just ASP.NET Core Web Application, choose Next. I'm going to give it a name. I'll call it COMP2084 Beer Store. No spaces, no hyphens. And I'm going to click Create, and then I'm going to choose the same options we enabled last week.
Rich, could you just pause for 1 second? Evase is just catching up.
Sure. You can name the project anything you like. You don't have to mimic my project name. Sure, Alexander, I like that. Yep, could be Rich's Beer Store. I set the prices. So the template we want in here is the one that defaults. Visual Studio will default to the selections from the last project. So we want a web application using model view controller. So that option's already selected for me. If this option isn't selected for you here in the middle, make sure you choose it. Web application model view controller. I'm going to make sure the configure for HTTPS is enabled. When we're running it locally, that doesn't really matter, but this adds the code that forces all requests to use SSL when we upload it to a live server. So best to enable that option when we create the project. Lastly, I'm going to change the authentication. Right now, all the views are public and there's no user or role management. We're not going to get to that until the middle of the course, but we want to enable it now. Riley, what options do you see? You can turn your mic on. Yeah, thanks, Leo. That's right. I'm just going to point back to an item from last week's instructions about installing Visual Studio for ASP.NET development. So if you go back to Tools and Resources, on D2L, in the Visual Studio Downloads item, I mentioned you need to install the ASP.NET Web Development and Azure Development components. You won't be able to build web applications unless you've installed those components. So the way to check is open up the Visual Studio installer. And once you find your installed version, so I have a few different versions, but I'm using Enterprise 2019. If you click on Modify, this is going to show you which components you've installed. So you need this in the Web and Cloud section, you need ASP.NET and Web Development, as well as Azure Development. So these should be checked off.
I have both of those.
You have both of them checked off? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So you can close this window. So let's go back here. So what options do you see in the create an application, or it's on the screen before that you're having the problem?
Create a new ASP.NET Core web application, the same as what you have up there. It's still empty in API.
It's empty in API, so none of these other options are here.
No, none of them.
Do you have .NET Core 3.1 up at the top here in this dropdown?
Yes, I do.
Are you on a Mac or are you on Windows?
I would never be able to stand Mac long enough before I threw it out of the window. I have Windows. No offense to anybody who has a Mac.
Okay.
I can try and figure this out and then get back to you after the class if I'm still having trouble.
Maybe we can connect after. I haven't seen that before, so let me know if you find a solution, and maybe when we have a break, I'll do a check as well.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to pick model view controller. We're going to configure for HTTPS, and I'm going to click change in the authentication section here. So click change, and I'm going to use individual user accounts. And I'm just going to leave this default option of store accounts in the app. Their accounts won't actually be stored in our application. They'll be stored in our database that we're going to create. So just the only option I'm going to change, I'm just going to click individual user accounts and click OK. And then I can finally click the create button here. So this is going to give us a starter project that's really identical to the one we generated last week. The only thing that's different is the project name. So we'll let Visual Studio set up the project. And then we'll start the local web server, we'll start IIS Express, and we'll get our template site launched in the browser. So I'm just going to click the debug menu, and I'm going to start without debugging. My little WebEx toolbar doesn't want to disappear on me today. Well, there, finally. So now we get really the same application we had last week. It gives us a default home and privacy view. We get links to register and log in with template forms. And the name of our project shows up here, also has a link in the header. So really kind of the same as what we did last week.
Rich?
Yep.
Avase is saying that his project is saying that it is configured to use an SSL.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, it is. If the browser gives a warning about the SSL, there's an option to just add an exception to say okay. That's fine.
Okay.
So if we want to view all the files in the project and start making some changes, over here on the top right, I have this Solution Explorer tab. If you don't see it, you can turn it on through the View menu, and Solution Explorer is the first item here. So we've got our models, views, and controllers folder. So last week we kind of modified, we get this default home controller under the controllers folder with two methods, index and privacy. And those methods load the views under views, home. We have index and privacy as views. So each link loads one of these views. So today we want to make our own controller and then play around with a little bit, explore working with our new controller. So to do this, I'm going to right click my controllers folder and I'm going to add a controller. Sky, did you change the authentication when you set the project up? You may have forgotten to do that. So it's probably easier, Sky, to create a new project. You can add the authentication in, but it's much easier to let Visual Studio do it because there's a fair number of libraries and files and configuration involved. So it's actually less work just to make a new project. Kyle, which window? The authentication? That window only comes up when you click change underneath the in the main project window. So again, you may just want to recreate the project, and under authentication, there's a little blue link that says change. You want to click that. That allows you to change from no authentication to individual. That will then add the register, login links, the pages, and all the code behind. Like I said, you can add it in manually after, but it's easier just to do it when you set up the project. So same for your assignments. Once you set your project up, you definitely want to add authentication right from the beginning. Okay. So I'm going to finish adding my controller. Now I'm going to click Add Controller. So we've got 6 different options. The 3 options at the bottom, we're going to use some of these later in the course when we build an API. And here we've got an empty, a controller that has some pre-built code, or a controller that has pre-built create, read, update, delete methods, as well as matching views. So this is a great option for once we have a database up and running. We'll be using this in the next couple of weeks, and you'll be using that in your assignment, but not yet. So for today, we're just going to pick an empty controller. So just add an empty controller, and we'll just call it store controller. So our controller should always have the word controller at the end. And notice the naming. So Visual Studio says it has to have the suffix controller. And the naming convention is Pascal case. So every word starts with a capital, including the first word, unlike in camel case. So this has been Microsoft's naming convention for decades. So I'm going to call it the store controller. And I'll click add. And then we get this simple file. So here's our class declaration. It's a public class. And this means that our controller inherits from the base class, from the base MVC controller. So any properties or methods the base controller class has, our store controller inherits. And notice we also, by default, already get a method called index. So we don't have to keep this, but we want to keep it because it means any URL that's our site / store will automatically call the index method. And we can see that. Yes, that's right, Leo. So in our program startup, we did look at this last week, right? It says, here's the default endpoint. If there's no controller specified, the default is the home controller. And if there's no specific index or method specified in the URL, then the default method is called index. So what does this mean? So here on our home page, just move my tab over here so we can see it a little more easily. So if I click this link that says COMP2084 beer store, notice the URL. It doesn't say /home/index, because when no controller is specified in the URL, it uses the home controller. And when no method is displayed, so if I do this, it still loads the home page or home/index. They all go to the same place because this is the default. Default controller is always called home, and the default method is always called index. So the default method in a controller, we don't actually have to include the word index in our URL. So what we want to do is now create, if we build the solution. So anytime we make changes to the C# code, we've added a new controller. It should recompile. And now let's try going to /store. And now we get this error. Our URL got interpreted properly, but it's trying to load a view in the views store folder called index, and this view doesn't exist. So we have a controller and we have a method, but we don't have a view. And we said last week that every method will automatically, unless otherwise specified, it will automatically return a view with the same name. So it's looking for a view called index, first in views store, and then in views shared, and then in pages shared. Can't find this view anywhere. So in order to make this URL work, we've got to create one of these views. So I'll go to Solution Explorer. Under views, first I need to create a folder. I want to create a store folder, and then we'll put our new view in there. So each controller, so we've got a home controller, and then in views, we have a home subfolder. Now that we have a store controller, we also want to have a store subfolder in views. Because we already have home index view, we now want a store index view. So I'm going to right click in views and store and choose add a view. And it's just going to be an empty view. And it's called a Razor view. Razor is just the name of the HTML templating engine that Microsoft has developed for MVC. So I'm going to create an empty view. And we want to call this view index because it's called from the index method in our controller. So our new file is going to be called index.cshtml. So it exactly matches the method name in the store controller. So I'll click add. So now under store, so we've got two views called index. One that's in the home folder and one that's in the store folder. Just going to take out all the code and we'll maybe just put on an H1. Now I'm going to go back to the browser. And I'll refresh this URL. And it should load our new page. So now it loads our page with my H1 tag, and it automatically includes our site layout, our header and footer. So this is pretty similar to what we did last week. Except last week we just added a new method and a new view inside of the home controller and inside the views and home folder. Today we're making a totally separate controller and new subfolder in views. So now we want to add a link. Right now, the user has no way to go here.
Rich?
Yep.
Sorry, Base is just past the point of adding the new view under the store folder. And now it's asking for something about an MVC. You have to change the name of it. Is that correct?
The name of the view is here. It's index.cshtml. That's the file name. It's highlighted in blue here on my screen.
Okay.
And if he gives it that name, then he should be able to go back to the browser and then refresh this link, and the page should load.
Okay.
Yes, Nick, I will. So I'll be working on this project each week, and I will be pushing to GitHub each week. Yes. So if I include /index in the URL, it loads the same page. So this part of the URL, because this is the default, it's optional. Doesn't really need to be there. If it is, it does the same thing. So now let's try and make, as we did last week, let's make a new method in our controller and another view. So I'm going to go back to my store controller. We'll make a new method. That we call browse. And often in the controllers, it's common to put in the URL path. So the path here will be store/browse. So if we want this page to load a different, this method to load a different view, what code would go in here on line 19 where my cursor is blinking?
I guess you would just return the index, right? Or call index.
Well, we called index here. Okay, so I'll answer your question in just a second. So if we want a new method called browse.
Oh, sorry, your return view. I thought you were asking how to return the index page here. Yeah, return view, sorry.
Yeah, so again, we're just going to write the same code. We're going to return a view. Avase, you can choose layout page. If you get that option, I'll respond in the chat. Whoops. So if it asks you to choose a layout for your view, we're always going to use a layout file, so browse to the default template. So I just added that in the chat. So now we want to make this view under store and browse. I'm going to add a view again. Yes, I realize this is a bit repetitive, but if we do it a few times, it'll become more familiar. So I'm going to add a view. It's going to be empty. And I'm going to give it the name of browse. So again, the name of the view matches the name of the controller method. So I'll just put a different message in here. Doesn't really matter what the content is, just something that's different. So now if I go to store and browse, you'll also notice the URLs on Windows are not case sensitive. So in your browser, you can use any case, doesn't matter. So now it loads our browse view. So again, we've added the browse method in the controller. We've created a new view under views and store with the same name of browse. And then we've put some HTML content in that view. So the other thing
Sorry, Rich, Avase is saying that he's getting another error code saying that it's not able to generate the view that he's created.
is there any other information along with that? Does it give any other details?
Do you want me to just share my screen?
Sure.
Okay, just one second.
So the other thing that we can do that you can try to do next is add a link to the store in your navigation bar. Okay, I'm seeing the screen. I saw the screen, but I just saw a desktop.
Okay, just one second. He's going to try to share it again.
So see if you can remember from last week where the navigation bar was, and add a link that says store that loads the store index. So we'll go over the solution in a couple minutes. I'm going to see if I can help Avase resolve this issue, and then we'll look at that link. Yeah, the screen sharing, it worked for a minute, but then it turned off. So I'm not seeing another screen.
Yep, he's trying to share it again now. He's just trying to sort it out his back because he's got multiple devices up, obviously, because one is connected to me.
Sure. Okay.
He's saying go ahead and keep on teaching. He's just trying to sort it out, and he'll let you know if he can get back to it. He's having a sharing his screen on that.
Okay, thanks. So does anybody want to suggest, anybody able to get their navigation bar link working? And if you are, could you maybe want to share how you did it? So how and where would we add a link to the store so that it appears on the header on all our pages? All right, so yeah, that's right, Leo. So you can see in the chat, under views, shared, and layout, that's where our nav bar is. And Leo's posted the code. So in your views and shared, under the underscore layout folder, so we have home and privacy. So down here on after line 27, before my line 28, we're going to add a new link where the controller this time is the store controller, and the action we're calling here is the index. Now you could put this just as a regular anchor tag. You could just use href equals /store/index. That would work. But using these ASP directives, they're kind of more intentional about the fact that we're using an MVC pattern. We're not just linking to a URL. We're actually calling the index method of our store controller. So I'm going to save that change. Thanks, Leo.
Abase has figured out how to share his screen now, if it's okay to jump in now.
Yep, just 1 second and we can do that. So now the one thing he should be aware of is that everybody, if I stop sharing, everybody is going to see his screen. So is he okay with that? Because there's no way to share it just with me.
Yep, he knows that. That's fine.
Okay, okay. So when I click on the store link now, it takes us to our main store page. Okay, so again, I'm going to pause the screen share for just a minute. Okay, Abase, if you want to go ahead and share, we can have a look. It's actually 5 to 3, almost 5 to 3. So why don't we, you know what, let's take a 10-minute break here. We've been going for 55 minutes. I know that's a long time to sit. So we will come back at 3:05. Okay. Yep. This looks good. So click add, just click add. Okay. It says the view's already, so click no. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. The view name, change it to browse with a capital
Change it to
B.
browse.
Browse with a capital B. Nope, not there. Cancel. In the very first box where it says view name, it says index. We're going to change that to say browse with a capital B. And click add. Okay, so click OK. And click cancel. Over on the right, I think the views did get created. If he expand the store folder, click the little triangle beside the store folder. Okay, so there's an error that it's showing in the gray section at the bottom. Okay, can he open up the shared folder that's just above store? And open up the error file. Okay. If he removes lines 1 to 4 and 9 to the bottom, that error should go away.
Is that good?
And now he should just click on the build, no, take out line 6 as well. Like everything from line 6 down, I'm sorry. Okay, and hit save. And then he can hit build and build solution. So the build menu, and then the first item there will be build solution. Okay, now we should be able to create the browse view again.
And then I click add from there.
Yep. Okay, it's working.
Okay, and then I just missed